All right, section 8.3. We're going to look at graphing in another way. In 8.2, we looked at plugging in different values for x or y and just finding the ordered pairs and then plotting them to graph, right? Remember, we only need 2 points in order to graph a line. So we were doing a little bit of overkill in 8.2 where we were finding 4 points. But we really only need 2 points, okay? But if you have more, it's no big deal. If it's linear, they'll all fall on the same line anyways. But in section 8.3, we're going to look at something called intercepts, okay? Your learning target is to be able to find x and y intercepts of graphs and then graph linear equations using those intercepts, okay? An intercept is where a graph crosses the x-axis or y-axis, okay? So x-intercept, it's the x-coordinate where the graph crosses the x-axis, and the y-intercept is the coordinate when it crosses the y-axis. For example, if I look at this graph and I did something like this, okay? This right here is the x-intercept, because that's where it crosses the x-axis, okay? And this right here would be the y-intercept, because that's where it crosses the y-axis, okay? And if you notice, the x-intercept, right? So let's say that I had another graph right here, like this. The x-intercept is always when y is 0, right? There's no height to that. It crosses, the y value is always 0 at the x-intercept. And then if we look at these y-intercepts on the y-axis, the x value is always 0, right? Because it is on this axis, so we don't go left or right at all. So there's no x change, it's 0, and we just go up. And we could have it where it crosses down here, right? So you could have a y-intercept that's negative as well. So that's what it means to be an intercept. It's where it crosses the given axis. So we want to find these intercepts from the graph. So looking at the x-intercept is where does it cross the x-axis? So if I look here, that's where it crosses, and that's at -2, right? If I were going to give it a coordinate, my x value is -2, y value is 0. And the y-intercept, right, where it crosses the y-axis is down here at -3. So if I were going to give that a coordinate, my x would be 0 here, and my y would be -3. All right, looked at a couple special cases here where it only crosses one. So if I look here, this horizontal line, it never touches the x-axis. So there is no x-intercept. However, there is a y-intercept here. It's up at +3, right? And again, if we wanted to give that a coordinate, the x value is 0, the y value is 3. And then on this one, the vertical line, right, it only crosses the x-axis at 5, and there is no y-intercept for that. So we can just look at a graph and see where it crosses the intercept, right, or it crosses the axis, and that would give us our individual intercepts. Now, we also need to be able to do it from equations because it doesn't always give us the graph. Now, one option is to graph it, okay? But when we graph by hand, you've seen me draw lines. They're not always 100% accurate. We're just drawing sketches of them. But here, to find intercepts, okay, we know that if it's an x-intercept, right, the y value is 0, right? Y value is 0. And if it's an x-intercept, if it's a y-intercept, the x value is 0. So what we want to do is we want to, right, remember in 8.2, we were like, all right, let's say x is 5. Let's say x is 6, right? And the points we used were -1, 0, 1, and 2, okay? And again, this is just another way to graph. So we're going to say, all right, well, 0 is an easy number to plug in. So if I plug in 0 for x, that would give me the y-intercept. So the first one I'm going to do is I'm going to say y equals 0 minus 6. Okay, so what I did is I took this 0 and I plugged it in for the x value. So 0 minus 6 is negative 6. Okay? So the y-intercept is at negative, is at negative 6. Now, before we'd say, okay, well, let's find when x is 1, but we want to find the intercept. So to find the x-intercept, I simply plug in 0 for the y. So this goes here. So I would say 0 equals x minus 6, right? Now I got to solve for x. So we go plus 6 to both sides, and we get a positive 6 for the x-intercept. Okay, so to find the y, we just plug in 0 for x. To find the x, we plug in 0 for y. All right, so see if you can do that over here, right? So we want to have our, so to find the y-intercept, we plug in 0 here. To find the x, we plug in the 0 here, right? And if you remember the backside of that worksheet from 8.2, that's essentially what we were doing, not necessarily with zeros, but with other values. So I'm going to plug 0 in here. So it would be 0 plus 2y equals 4. All right, so really this is 0. Now divide both sides by 2. We get y equals 2. So my y-intercept is 2. And to find the x-intercept, I'm going to plug a 0 in here. So we would have x plus 2 times 0 equals 4. Right, well, 2 times 0 is 0. Nothing else to solve here. X is equal to 4. So my x-intercept is 4. All right, so I want you to try, right? So you're going to pause the video here. Okay, you're going to pause the video here, and I just want you to find the y-intercept and the x-intercept. Okay, so take a minute and find those two values, and then we'll look at how to use them to graph. So pause, and I'll see you in a minute. All right, hopefully you were able to get 6 for your y-intercept and 4 for your x-intercept, right? And then if I go to graph these, right, I can graph these points, and I know that they're the intercepts. So the y is up here at 6, and the x-intercept is over here at 4. So I plot those on the axis, and then straight line. And there's the graph, right? Remember, we only need 2 points to graph our line, and today we're looking at using the intercepts to do that. Now, there are a few special cases, right, where we have a horizontal line or a vertical line where we only have one intercept, okay? And so there's no x-intercept when we have a y equals equation. It just tells me what y is equal to all the time. So if I go up here, right, here's what y is equal to, right? Y is equal to 5, right? Well, y is also equal to 5 right here. So no matter what the x value is, y is equal to 5. That would give me a horizontal line, right? And so if it were to say find the x and y intercept, so the x-intercept would be none, right? Because it doesn't cross. And the y-intercept would simply be 5 because it's always 5, right? It tells me that. Or if I look here, y equals negative 2. So I go down on the y-axis to negative 2, And I could pick any other point, right? There's y is -2. There's y is -2. There's y is -2. It doesn't matter what the x value is because that's not in the equation. Y is just always equal to -2, right? Both of these are functions, right? Because if I did the vertical line test, it would only hit that graph once and that graph once. However, vertical lines are not functions, okay? And notice there's no y value in my equation. So there's going to be, so if I were going to list the x-intercept and the y-intercept, okay, there's no y. So there's no y-intercept. So x equals 3. I go to where x-axis equals 3. It's right here, right? Remember, we need 2 points to graph, so I got to find another spot. Well, x is also equal to 3 right here. It's equal to 3 right here. So if I were to graph that, all of those values have x equal to 3. It says nothing about y, right? It's just x is always equal to 3. So there's my intercept of 3. Right? If we did x is -1, I come over to the -1, right? There's my intercept. All right, this is also x is -1. This is x is -1. So that would be a vertical line at -1, okay? And again, there's no y-intercept, just an x-intercept in these special cases, right? And then only a y-intercept over here. Now, again, remember, this is not a function, right? It's still a graph, right? But it's not a function because if I draw that line, it hits all of those. All right, for your practice, work on page 384 and do the following problems, right? And then after you're done, so on a separate sheet, and then you can check your work using the answer key. All right, if you have any questions, let me know, and we will talk to you soon.